because we don't operate like a typical law firm, like I work from home, like I'm never in suits. Like I tried really intentionally to make it also look like, why is this law firm like bright neon yellow? Like they must be doing something like totally not what I'm used
Yeah.
to.
All right. So, welcome to the You Are Lawyer podcast. Taylor Tieman, how are you today?
Good. Happy it's Friday.
Yes. Yes, this has been a long week. Were you obsessed with all the eclipse stuff earlier this week?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm like very into astrology and all of the everything around it. So yeah, very obsessed.
Yes. Yeah. So, I'm definitely dating this episode. We are recording this in April 2024. Okay. So, you guys won't hear it till like October, but just so you know, we were all about eclipse mania. So, Taylor, I saw you on LinkedIn and I was like, oh, this is fascinating. I've got to talk to you. Somebody that I know was commenting on a recent trip you took to Mexico. And I was like, okay, we got to talk about it. So, will you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you were doing in Mexico?
Yeah. Well, I'm a lawyer by day, but I really have picked up traveling or trying to travel a lot more in the past couple of years because I run my own firm now and can kind of dictate my schedule. So I told myself 2 years ago that I want to go to Mexico once a year if possible, because I'm half Mexican on my mom's side, and like we don't go back and forth a lot. Like I went when I was 3, and then we never went back
Wow.
for a while. So I just was like, I need to go yearly. There's so many beautiful places in Mexico I've never seen. I got my husband on board finally, and he's like in love with it. So we were in Oaxaca in February.
Okay. All right. So, you dropped a couple gems there. You said you started your own firm. What made you decide to do that?
I truthfully was wanting to do like transactional law, entertainment, IP type of law, like all throughout law school. After graduating, I really wanted to do that type of work and just could not for the life of me find a job in those arenas because it is extremely competitive. And I'm in
Yeah.
LA where it's even more competitive. And just after like 4 years in the law firm where I was doing civil litigation, just was like, I don't want to give up on this dream. Like, how do I make this work? Because the people aren't hiring me. Like, is there a way that I can still make this work? And saw online that there were attorneys that do what I do now, where we help business owners. You're still doing a lot of hands-on IP work, doing a ton of transactional stuff. So I kind of found like a little avenue where I didn't have to rely on getting hired.
Yeah.
You also have to run your own law firm, which is a ton of work, but it's totally worth it.
Yeah. So I know within IP law, there's a couple different strands, right? I was working in a big law firm and we were doing IP, but we were doing counterfeits and e commerce law. But
Mhm.
then I have a trademark. And I remember my trademark lawyer was like, now I'm going to register it, I'm not going to monitor it, right?
Mhm.
So which branches do you do, or do you do all three, or what?
Yeah, we do probably like most of our IP work, 95% of it is trademark. We do
Okay.
some copyright. We don't do any patents because I'm not licensed for that. But well, we also do like work product and um, things we want to keep confidential. But the most of it is trademark. We do monitoring work for clients that have gotten their trademarks registered, but our main clientele are usually newer business owners. So like the first step of getting them the trademark is usually the hurdle. And then
Yeah.
also convincing like the monitoring is really important is a little bit more difficult to market for. So we
Yeah.
do it, but it's not as much as just getting the initial trademark file.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I remember I was so excited when it came in the mail, the long piece of paper, and I was like, oh my
Right.
gosh. And she's like, yeah. So if anyone else is using it, you got to find out. And I was like, oh, this is where the work starts.
Yeah,
Great.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, with
But
like social media, it's a little easier to monitor in that sense because you can see it. But
yeah.
if there's somebody on like off grid, you don't know where they are, what they're doing. It's a little harder.
Yeah. And I remember even learning about intellectual property in school is different than having your own, right?
Mhm.
Because I'm like, oh, okay, this is cool. And she's like, well, she made me fill out like a questionnaire, like, how long have you been using this name? What social media? And I was like, this is a lot. And she's like, you run the business. This is the government recognizing you using the trademark. And for
Yeah.
some reason, that had never clicked with me in law school. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, it's not like the government gives you a trademark. They're acknowledging that you've been using it.
I mean, the theory behind IP is like what we all learn in law school, but like the practical actually filing it, like what it means to get the application in is like is so different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So that's cool. All right. So civil law to entertainment IP law, they feel like very big differences to me.
Yeah.
How did your friends and family feel about you saying, I'm going to go and do something else?
My parents were not upset, but my mom was like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Um, she initially was after I started my firm was still, I mean, I love my mom. She's super supportive, but she was sending me like job listings
Oh,
after I started my firm because she still was like, "Look, you can," and I was like, "No, no, I think I got this.
yeah.
I think I can do this." And I never wanted to start my own firm. Like I do not have, well, now I do, but I never had the personality to start my own law firm of like putting your name out there, like putting your face on camera. Like that was just not going to be my ideal thing. And I think she was like, "How are you going to do this?"
Yeah.
But yeah, I think my friends were like, they didn't comment too much until that they saw that my firm, I think, was getting successful, and then they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, like you started your own firm, like how did you do that?" Because I think even in law school we don't the like solo practitioners don't have the best reputation. Like people just think that if you're working for yourself it's because like nobody wanted to hire you, which in my
Yeah.
situation was kind of true because nobody wanted to hire me for IP. But I was in law firms and just I wanted to do something that I could have a lot more control of.
Yeah. I like to compare it to like a home baker. Like you can
Hmm.
be classically trained, French trained. You just started
Yeah,
baking out of your house. It's not like, you know what I mean? You're just Googling recipes on the internet and doing it. Like you just
yeah,
happen to be at your house. Okay.
yeah.
So Taylor, when I first saw everything with you, I was like, oh my gosh, Legal Miga. Is that the name of your law firm or is that the name that you use to just discuss everything that you're doing?
It's now the name of my firm. So now
Okay.
it's LegalMiga Law PC. But initially, I kind of just used LegalMiga as a handle because I thought it was cool. And then we have a legal services membership that's called the LegalMiga membership, which has
Okay.
been around pretty since we first started, kind of. But I just changed the law firm name over
Okay.
pretty recently too.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the name. What does it mean? What does it stand for?
It is just a combination of like legal and amiga, which is friend in Spanish. And I really wanted, I think after seeing the relationship that I have with my clients and seeing that like so many people are afraid to work with lawyers and we don't have the greatest
Yeah.
reputation. I wanted it to be just like a approachable kind of name and thing, and I think I put it out there thinking like hoping it would kind of turn into that. And
Okay.
then, I mean, I joke that I'm like super introverted, kind of have like resting bee face, and like I'm not the most friendly looking person. But then I started going to events, and people were like telling me like, "Yeah, you're so approachable with the legal stuff. Like, I feel like I can really talk to you." I kind of like named it before I like found that personality and just kind of they really luckily lined up with each other.
You manifested it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I don't know if I would say you weren't introverted because I don't know you, but your brand is very bold and colorful, right?
yeah,
Like looking at it is really energizing. So you definitely would think, oh, a lawyer as a friend? Like I get it.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
We did a lot of work too to make sure that I mean, nothing, shade on like typical law firms, but like I didn't want, because we don't operate like a typical law firm. Like I work from home, like I'm never in suits, like unless I'm doing photo shoots. Like
Yeah.
I don't operate like a lawyer that I think most people would think of. We still do all the same work, but I tried really intentionally to make it also look like, hey, wow, why is this law firm like bright neon yellow? Like they must be doing something like totally not what I'm used
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. For one, it makes your law firm memorable. And for two, you're like, to your point, wait, why are they different than everybody else that I see on TV? Call me for a car wreck.
Yeah,
Boring suit, blue font. So,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So, would you tell me a little bit more about the membership that you have?
yeah. We have a legal services subscription membership where it is instead of having to like schedule individual calls or consults with us or like do more project based things, it's just an ongoing membership where our members have access to be able to email us, ask us questions. We have monthly office hours, and it's just a little bit more hands on for business owners that need a little bit more guidance along the way in terms of like holistic business legal protection, because we do have clients that come in for like a trademark application or a contract to get drafted.
Mm,
But business owners need, especially in those initial stages, so much more than I think they can even think about initially. And so we wanted to offer something that was like, look, come talk to us, like have us in your circle, let us know what you're doing, like let us tell us what you're launching, tell us what your business is doing so I can be more involved and just give you
yeah.
more insights on what you need to be protecting.
Yeah. So I'm going to explain that a little bit more just because the podcast audience is like 70% lawyers, law students, but then there's 30% that just think changing jobs is cool, right? And so for everyone who's like, well, why does that matter? Subscription based legal services is revolutionary, right? It's typically you pay a retainer to a huge law firm, whether you have questions, whether you don't, you still pay them based on when you contact them. So to
Mhm.
pay on a monthly basis, and then if I have 12 questions or I have one, you're still there,
Yeah.
is pretty groundbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't definitely didn't invent it. There's other really amazing law firms that operate on that model. We work with Kim Bennett, who does a ton of legal subscription work and is always like talking about that. So definitely didn't invent it, but I loved it on the lawyer side because running a law firm is like you never know how much money's coming in, and just being an entrepreneur in general, you're like, what does this mean next month? So having
Yeah,
some, I'd say like half of our firm's revenue is subscription based, so we can count on every month what's coming in and at least knowing those numbers, which
yeah,
made me feel a lot better as like a first time law firm owner of trying to figure out like can this even work.
yeah. Because running a business is really fun, but there's a lot of work and it's not standard hours. And you wake up in the middle of the night, like, wait, did I do that? Or writing
Yeah.
down questions for the next day. Like,
Yeah.
there's always something. But I love to talk to business owners who are also lawyers because I think our background in research makes us really good business owners. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, I would agree. I think whether I like over hired for help early or not, but I just was like getting tons of coaching on how to start a law firm because I knew that there was a lot I didn't know, just like with the law, where there's like you scratch the surface of one thing and it's like a whole thing underneath.
Yeah,
So I knew going into that there was going to be a lot more that I needed to learn. And just like, when you ask an older, more experienced attorney for help of things that they've seen along the way, I definitely wanted some guidance in terms of how to run the law firm business side itself.
yeah, yeah. I love that. And so are you feeling more confident now?
Oh yeah, a lot more. I mean, I'm never feeling like, oh, I got this for the rest of
Yeah.
the time. Like, because law changes all the time. Like, even we do most of our marketing on social media, and I initially was really just hitting hard with Instagram, and that's where most of stuff came through. Instagram has been a lot slower in general for everybody, so like having to shift platforms and like
Mm-hmm.
social media marketing has even I've seen it change drastically in like 4 or 5 years. So
Yeah.
it's a lot to keep on top
Yeah.
of.
All right. So, Taylor, you also have the LegalMiga library. What is that and how can people use that?
Yeah, we initially, when I first started, I was talking to tons of clients that just couldn't afford legal help. Like they wanted it, they'd call us, they'd pay for a consult, and then be like, "Okay, thank you, great, but I can't afford to have you draft like 5 contracts for me." So I knew there was a middle ground. There's also other attorneys that have template libraries as well. But the way that we operate ours is it's not part of our law firm. It's separate from the law firm, but it is a template educational kind of library for we target business owners to come and like grab whatever templates they need. They are attorney drafted, so we're able to say they're attorney drafted, but we're not like customizing them for anybody purchasing over there. It's like one and done template situation. Go grab it. It's much cheaper than having me custom draft for you. So it's better than you coming up with something on your own, Googling. It's not as
Yeah.
good, obviously, as a custom draft, but it's a good middle ground for business owners that don't always have the budget to pay immediately for everything.
Yeah. So I'm over here smiling and I'm kind of laughing because I'm like, every time there was a problem, you found a solution for it. And I think that's really cool, right? I hope you are like, when you go to bed at night, you're like, I'm kind of smart. Look at all this stuff I've done. Because you could have just been like, wow, I hope someone creates that. But you made it.
I love the community that I work with. I love the type of business owners we work with because I love the educational piece. Some lawyers don't. Some lawyers would have seen that and been like, these people can't pay my bills. I need to target a different audience. But
Yeah.
I really love my community and my audience. And I was like, I know there's ways to get them things that they need for a better price. I don't have to necessarily like cut my prices in half to work with them. Like we can do templates. And I think just looking at in general, access to justice gap is so big and there's so many ways we're not trying to address it because we have sometimes like an older mindset of like, well, if they can't pay, they can't pay. And it's like you're not going to fix it like that. And
Yeah.
legal templates are not legal advice is not a custom attorney, but it's something for them to have instead of, having nothing or like and fortunately the clients that we've worked with have allowed me to like come up with cool ideas for them, and instead of being like you can't pay, I don't want to work with you, I'd rather kind of custom
Yeah.
make things for them that they can afford.
Yeah, and I think that's good business sense, right? Because the short term game is, oh, you can't pay me right now, goodbye. The long
Yeah,
term game is, well, you can't pay me right now, but here's something that can help you. And as you use these contracts and your business keeps growing, I'm also still here for when you need me in the future too. Like that's
yeah,
really smart.
yeah, it's a not a lot of lawyers love that concept because there are like ethical things you have to be mindful of, like we have an ethics attorney, like we've done everything legally behind the scenes to make sure it's working
Yeah.
properly. But I mean, even the rules for lawyers are so strict that like we have to make sure we're following a lot of stuff. But I think there's room to also kind of push boundaries for the communities that don't have access to this stuff, which is like it's just not going to get fixed unless we start pushing boundaries.
Yeah. Okay, very cool. So I have two more questions for you. The first one is trademark law is typically filed in like your federal registrations, all those things. Do you work with clients all over the country or only in California?
Yep, we work with clients all over the country. I would say most of them are in California just because like we do a ton of local based stuff, and the type of clientele we're working with, there's a ton of just business owners, BIPOC owned, Latino owned in California,
Yeah.
also like Texas, New York. But yeah, we have clients all over the US for trademark work.
Okay. All right. And I always ask this question every episode. I mentioned it a little bit. Most of the podcast audience is young lawyers, 5 years practicing or less, or law students. What would you say to them about what they can do with their law degrees?
Oh my goodness. I think my law school is like, I love my law school. I love law school in general, aside from like, obviously, it's really hard work and very stressful. But I think there's not a ton of emphasis on all of the things you can do with a law degree. I think like people say like you get a law degree and there's so many things you can do, but if you don't see the things you can do, it's hard to kind of picture that for yourself. And sometimes it takes talking to different lawyers, like asking lawyers that you have no idea what they're doing, like what do you do for a living? How does your day-to-day life work? I think what really attracted me to this type of lifestyle was like I love working from home. I am a little bit more introverted when it comes to like office stuff. So
Yeah.
I love working like in my house alone. Some people don't like that. So if you're going to hate that, like don't look into stuff like that. But I think looking at all the different possibilities of how you can use a degree and just talking to other lawyers and seeing like, that looks weird. What are you doing? But then you might find out it's not weird and they're making way more than you thought. And you're like, oh, wow, that's actually a really cool job to
Yeah.
have.
Yeah, I love that. It's kind of like just staying curious,
Yeah.
right? Because we've all seen the TV shows or the movies where you go to the firm and that's what you do, or you go to
Mhm.
court and you try to get someone out of jail. But like there's 75 different other spectrums that are in between there of things that you can
Yeah.
do, right?
Yeah.
And so it's basically just taking your legal education, having it be the foundation, and then creating whatever you want from there.
Yeah. Also, the numbers on, I think, I don't know the exact ones, but I think I just thought it was way common to just leave law school and go work for big law. And the percentage of people that actually do that is much lower than what
Mm-hmm.
actually exists. Like, there's more people running solo practices than I think we are thinking about when we're in law
Okay.
school. So you just kind of think like, oh, I maybe don't want to do that. But there's a ton of us doing it. And it's like, you can make it way more flexible. And I always was like, how am I going to get insurance? Because that's what my mom always would ask me is like, how are you going to
Yeah.
get benefits? Like, our firm buys our own benefits, like because we make money to afford those things to like I have benefits. It's not like I'm walking around with no healthcare benefits.
Yeah, but also your business has to grow to a certain level to be able to afford that too, right? And so I think even in the fact that you have it, it just means that this isn't a hobby, right? There is still that kind of stigma of, well, they work from home, or why is that? I'm sure you could have an office if you wanted. You're
Yeah,
paying insurance for yourself, and I'm sure other people. Like, this is a legit business. It just doesn't look the way that someone would have thought. And so
yeah.
you got to like either change that judgment or just open your mind to say, wow, look at the way that she's created this.
Yeah, we actually just opened up a office space this past year, and I haven't had
Okay.
a office space, but like I don't use it. Like I think I go in there I go in there like once a week. I go for clients that want the in-person
Yeah.
consultation, but like, I thought I was gonna use, I don't use it very much. Like I still like working from home. I want to do events and stuff there, but I'm like, okay, cool. If I had
Yeah.
this to begin with, I probably wouldn't have been using it at all.
Yeah. And you never know what that could turn into, a little coffee shop, a little whatever, event space that you rent out to other people.
Yeah,
Like, I love it. You're just creating your own rules.
yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of work, but it's fun.
Yes. All right. Well, Taylor, thank you so much for sharing with us. I know the audience is going to enjoy hearing from you and learning from you. Would you tell everyone where they can find you on social media?
Yeah, most of my handles on most social platforms are LegalMiga, LegalMiga, and I'm usually on like Instagram a lot. We do a lot of like client, uh, trying to get more clients over there and just contacting and educating people.
Very cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, Taylor. You have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.